Welcome to the first One Cut Studio Pixel Dojo RMMV tutorial. So today, what I thought I'd like to do is trying out a new format, video tutorials. The tutorials that I wrote for the RPG Maker VX Ace took a long time, so I figured what I would do was I would just kind of make pixel art, talk about it, and as I go along. And hopefully these videos don't get rambly. I do not like videos that ramble, so I apologize if that does happen. But what I did was I made something beforehand, and I'm going to try to explain how I got there through that process. So if you saw the GIF of the newscaster, this is the tutorial showing how I did that. So kind of behind the scenes look. So the first thing that I wanted to show you was not the cityscape, that was part of it though, was the television. And basically very basic spriting the television. What I did first was I made a 96 by 48 canvas, and that serves as the tiles for my screen, and it's just a very basic rectangle. And to show you here, I just took a 1 pixel brush and make sure it's 1 pixel. Yep, 1 pixel brush. And I started 2 pixels away from the edge of my canvas, and I made just a very flat black border. Gave another pixel in, did another black border, and the reason why I left some room down here is because what I wanted to do was make a logo, in this case a Sunny TV. So don't sue me, Sony, a Sunny. At first it was a very gray, I made gray letters, but then I realized you can't see it when you zoom out, it's not the best, so I just made it white. And then the other thing that I did was I filled it with, this is I think one of the colors from the sample set up here, just kind of like a darkish brown, and then this is one of the grays. So if I just zoomed back and looked at it, looks pretty good. It looks like a television. The only other thing that I added was a power button, and this is just 4 square green pixels. And by adding a glow effect, you can make it look like the button has been turned on. So you can have a sprite sheet set up where you have the TV, and then let's say your character walks up to it, turns it on, boom, and you have just an added little detail that makes it extra nice. So if you don't know how to do this, all I did was I drew a 4 pixel green dot, and then on that layer you go onto blending options, and you get a whole bunch of layer styles to choose from. Then I went to outer glow. In blend mode I chose screen. You can go through and scroll through and see what happens to your blend does different things. But for this one I chose screen. And I like the opacity at 75%. Play with the sliders a little bit. You don't want your LED to be super bright. It was make it really, so I chose 9%. And there's all these other features that you can play with, but for a basic button you can do that. And you can also use this technique, the outer glow, for lots of other things too. If you want to think about applying it to your pixel art, you can make your character's eyes glow. If you make like a layer just above your character's eyes, make it red, and then you use that glow effect, add a red glow, then you have that too on top of your sprite. So you can make some horror characters that way. You can make warning lights, anything you can think of. Your creativity, your imagination. Don't let it stop you from coming up with things. You just need to know how to do it. And so simple little tricks like that, where I know it's not true pixel art. This is photo manipulation for video games and stuff like that. It just takes your video game art to the next level, I think, and you can do some pretty fun stuff with it. So now that I have the TV, the next thing I wanted to show you was how I made the cityscape that served as the background for the news anchor. So with this background, it's again pretty simple. I made, let's see what the canvas size is. The canvas size I chose in pixels was 144 wide by 60 high. And the reason why that is I wanted it to be about a 3 by 1, and then I was going to shrink it. So I just made it a little bit larger than that. So when I eventually do shrink this background, it'll fit nicely within the television. So the first thing I did was I did my foreground building. So let me eliminate all this extra stuff. And I drew on here earlier as a demonstration for something else. No need to worry about that. So what I did was I took a 1 pixel brush, I used black, and I just started making random shapes. Some buildings are symmetrical, some are not. Some have funky buildings. Some of them don't connect. Some of them do connect. Like these are 2 separate buildings, but or they could be one. It doesn't matter. And I just kind of drew out shapes that I thought would look interesting. Varied the heights, varied the profiles. I gave some these see-through windows. Like it has a glass pane, and that's how I came up with just the various designs for my foreground. And then I made my background buildings, and I kind of drew some of my background buildings on my foreground. I found that I was just kind of on a roll, and I didn't realize I didn't separate the layers, and I was just kind of drawing. So you can do that too, but if you really want to have complete control and you want to separate your layers, you can. And so now what I did for color choices is, I used black for my foreground, which kind of seems strange, but I found it works really well. And then as you go backwards in space, there is more particles in the atmosphere, and so the light that reaches your eye is less from the things, from the objects that are farther away. The light is less, that gets diffused, bounced off, and all that kind of thing. So you're going to have images where they're less vibrant, they're darker, or they are grayer, that type of deal. So in this case, what I did was basically I just went down to a tone of gray. So I went from black into my foreground to gray in my background. And I just did 2 backgrounds, but you can go and you can do more and more and more and more. But I wanted to leave room up here because I was going to do a sky. And to do that, as you can see, my skyline, I just basically use a gradient tool. I use the gradient tool here, which if you aren't familiar with the gradient tool, it's also where the paint bucket is. But it's a really nifty tool to do. You could also make your own gradient if you wanted this even more like pixel art. You could, let's say I wanted to do blue, and I would make my own layers. I'd say, like, I'd start here and I'd have this blue. I should probably switch back to that. And then I can go to a blue that's even darker than that. Just picking colors, seeing how it works for me, and you can make your own gradient. And so you kind of have a step pattern that way. But to save time and also just to make it blend, I chose the gradient tool, and I chose something that looked like it would probably be a sunset or a dusk. Let me show you something else that I had. I tried in the beginning too, was this blue. So I don't know, it looks okay, but it's not really good for a nighttime scene because I put lights on the buildings. This pink works much better. It's nighttime, maybe it's 7 o'clock. I know people are ready to go home and have dinner. And then the last layer that I added was the building lights. Now for the building lights, I used a 2 pixel brush in the foreground layer. So on my foreground buildings, I used a 2 pixel brush, and I just chose a yellow color for the light. You could choose another color for your light if you'd like to, but I just thought yellow would look good against this background. I used a 2 pixel brush, and then I just kind of put windows there. That looks good. And I kept in mind that not all the lights are going to be on. Same thing. This building I did 2 pixels because I felt like it was going to be a bigger building. You could experiment with different window shapes. These guys have long horizontal windows. And then in the background, again, because you're losing light getting to your eye the farther you go away, this color is going to be less saturated. So what I did was I chose my foreground color, and then I went to L over here, which I think stands for lumosity or luminosity. I think lumosity is that brain website. Luminosity. Dragged it down so you're going to have less light, and that's how I got the light and the dark. So if you compare these two side by side, you'll notice. I don't know why that's. Oh, opacity is 75%. Okay, that's why. You'll notice that the background color is desaturated a little bit. It's a little bit darker. And then I also set the opacity to 75% because I thought that looked better. So there it is. There it is at 100%. And so I'm like, maybe it doesn't. Those lights stand out too much. And then I brought it down to 75%. So now what I have is I have a working background for my newscaster. So in the second part, I'll show you how I made the newscaster from RTP parts, and I will also show you how I put together the series of animations and scaled it down so that way it fit inside the television. So hang on for part 2.